Hi everyone, Angus Campbell here. Thursday 19th of March 2020. So, back on the Fury. And now we're getting into some of the little detailed jobs while we're still waiting for the head to be completed. Hopefully I'll get a follow-up tomorrow, some feedback tomorrow on how they're progressing with that over at Ward's Engineering in Rugby. But in the meantime, we've still got lots of detailed little jobs to do, and these are the ones that take all the time for what appear to be very little progress or return. So in the last episode on this, we were fitting and installing the right rear engine plate, so that means we could button up the swing arm spindle, but also we could then install the rear brake pedal in its adjuster and the rear brake rod, which is all done. However, couldn't quite complete that because one, we didn't have what they call the pivot bush at this end, because I'd nicked that for the lightning in the distance over there, and secondly I realised as well that I didn't have an adjuster for the end of it. So those parts have now arrived. There's the pivot bush and a couple of second-hand adjusters which are perfectly serviceable. Actually, one's in very good condition, the other one's a little bit rougher, but it's alright. Can't see it too well. Threads on that one don't look too good actually, but on this one we're fine. So that's definitely the one we're going to use. I think. He says hopefully. Yeah, there it goes. It is screwing on and it is holding. That's good. So we'll fit that. Also, little tiny things like you can't quite see it too well there, but there's a hole there in the brake plate. And that's to grease the cam spindle, so there's got to be a grease nipple on there. So we've got grease nipples, we'll put that on. And then at the front end, we've got the rear brake light switch, which fits on there, like so. And then once that's on, we can complete, where are we? Whoops, dropped it. We can complete the fitting of the rear brake rod, which is a 90-degree bend here, goes through the hole onto the other side, and then is held on this side. I'll put a slight sleeve on it because the rear brake rod isn't the correct rod for this. The correct rod for this has a much longer angled end to it, so that it actually presses onto the rear brake light switch. It's not a clever system really, I don't think, but it seems to work anyway. So what I'll do is, with the rear brake rod that I've got, I'll push that through and then I'll extend it with a sleeve, and then it's just held in that position by a split pin. So we'll hold it all together with a split pin. Let me just retrieve the rod, which has made a bid to escape and been flung across the garage. For those of you that may watch the Musty One channel on YouTube, he always has a bit of fun with parts fighting him and being launched across the garage. That's his terminology. So there you can see. So this is already drilled, so it's held by a split pin. But this rod is really for one of the big twins, one of the A65s. Maybe I can show you it actually. The one for the Fury should have a longer stalk on it. Sorry about all the way. There's a tour of the garage. Now then, can you see this? In fact, probably not very well. No, you can't. Let me get a torch. There you go. So you can see there then how it's much longer here after the bend, so that it presses on that rear brake light switch. You can see in here actually it's not lining up very well, but it's held there by a split pin. What we'll need to do on the Fury SS is I've got a length of tube which will push as a sleeve to over the existing rod to extend it with the tool. I'll show you what's in these boxes some other time, but it's interesting, especially that box with a tank in it, export tank. That's interesting. Right, that's the job in hand. So yes, we're going to put a sleeve on this. So here we go. In there is just a bit of aluminium sleeving, cut to size, so we'll drill that to line up with this, and the whole lot then will be just held in with a split pin. And that's how it was. Doesn't seem very clever, I know, but it does work, I can assure you. Certainly on the Bandit, we've used the same system. So we've got that to do. So that's a long way of saying we can sort that. So let's get on with that first anyway, and then we'll look for other detailed jobs. I'm waiting for a couple of links for the rear chain. Those haven't arrived yet, but they're expected in the next day or so. And we can finish off the rear chain, which, if you remember, is about a link or two too short, which I can't explain, but we can fix. That's easy enough. And then really what I'm doing is just looking at little bits and pieces now, really, before we then attack the main wiring harness, and that's going to be very soon because we're just about there. And I think, as I said in a previous video, we've got the front harness from the headlight which goes to a junction box under the tank, which you can't see at the moment, the tank's on. We've got a rear A65 harness, I think. Sorry, that's not a very good pick, is it? I was thinking about taking the seat off there, but I've only got one hand. We've got a rear an A65 full harness, and essentially what we'll do with that is that we'll install that all for the rear end and all the electrical components that are on a mounting plate under here, which I'll show at a later date. And then we'll feed it up to the front here, and basically before that junction blocks, we're going to just chop it. We're going to butcher it. And then we just need to put spades on the end of each of the wires, and then just work out how to knit them all together, but that's not too bad a job, to be honest. Right, let's get on with getting this rear brake rod operational. Right, there we go, back and tidied up. I had to take the brake arm off and just twist the brake plate around to get that grease nipple in, because it's in quite an awkward position there, and raises questions about how you grease it. But obviously with this model the brake plate's on the other side, so it's the other way around. So normally that would be facing backwards, but everything's the wrong way around on this bike, so that's why it's facing forward. But with a flexible hose, and as I say, we're just undoing the spindle nut and taking the brake torque arm off the end. You can twist the whole brake plate around and grease it up. So that's on. The pivot bush is in, and the adjuster nuts on the end, and as you can see, we've got a full nut there, and it's pretty much adjusted how I'd want it, and returning nicely. So that's that job done. So next we'll focus on finishing off the front end of the brake rod here. Right, we're at the stage now then where the rear brake light switch has been mounted, and actually this was a pig to do, so I actually ended up taking the adjustable bracket off and the swinging arm pivot nut off taking this all off so I could just mount this on the bracket and then reinstall it all as one. So that's now done, and what we need to do now then is effectively extend this rod across so that once it's all adjusted up, it then will work the rear brake light switch. And the way that I've done this on the Bandit is to take a small piece of quite thick aluminium tubing, and then let me just change hands because I'm right-handed, and then all we'll do is, I just need to hold this, hang on a sec, there's a close-up, slip that over like so, we'll drill it, and then we'll put the split pin through the holes in this and the brake rod to keep it in position. And the reason I do it like that rather than extend the rod is that I think that provides a better keeper for the rod with respect to the this if you like butting up against the brake arm than just the what would have originally been just the split pin itself in that position, which, as I say, looks a bit inadequate, but that's how it was done. So what we'll do now next then is drill this, place it on the end here, we'll put a split pin through, then we'll adjust up and we'll see if it works. Right, there we are, job done. So there's the sleeve, mounted over the rod, drilled all the way through with and a split pin pushed through, and you can just see it is turned over on the other side. One of the bottom pins is turned over. I can't quite show you it too well. Anyway, one of the pins of the split pin is bent over underneath. But what's been the biggest challenge is making sure this is lined up properly so it actuates, if you like, because its two mounting points, one on the bottom there, are both adjustable, but you can imagine how difficult it is to get a spanner on the backside nut of that and on the front of it. But anyway, we've done it, and it does work now very well. I think it's all squared up and tight. So that's that job done. Next job, chain. The rear chain, as you know, we've been waiting for links for this, and they've arrived, so we can now address that, because as you might be able to see just down here, there it is, and that's because the chain appeared to be a link or two short. So we've now got some links to sort that out, and let me get the splitter out and weld that together, and I'll bring you back. Right, so chain splitter in action. We're going to replace a half link there, well, half a link if you like, with a link which is two half links, if you see what I mean. So we'll extend it by half a link, and that's going to be enough to do it, I think. So let's get on with that now and see where we get to. Right, we've taken a half link out, male to male, and we'll replace it with a full link, male to male, but with a half link extension, if that makes sense. So that is a link and that is a half link, but this is a half link extension. So we'll now put that into there, and that'll give us that just that little bit that we need to be able to extend the chain to get the split link in. Okay, half link successfully pressed in, or half link extension I should say. So let's see if we can fit up the chain now with the split link. Right, there we are. Split link in, as you can see, with the spring fitted the correct way around, i.e. with the curved end towards the direction of motion, and the half link behind it there. The interesting thing now is that we appear to have a ton of slack in the chain. So what we'll do anyway is we've got the wheel is absolutely right at the furthest point forward, or the spindle is in the frame. So let's just adjust up the wheel anyway and see where we land. And it would be sod's law, wouldn't it, that once it's adjusted up we find that I didn't need that half link after all. But that doesn't matter because we can take it out. But anyway, let's adjust up the back wheel and nip that up and see where we stand. Okay, at last, job done. Rear chain installed and completed. As usual, wasn't quite straightforward adjusting it because these rear adjusters are rubbish actually. So as you can see, I've had to double nut because they're just on that little tiny nut there with a soft bolt. There just wasn't enough thread, but that's worked well actually. So we've tightened up, and it was the same on the other side. Absolute rubbish pattern parts as normal, but anyway, we've managed to rectify the situation, and actually just there we go. Maybe a couple more. Okay, so that's it. We'll finish it there for this episode. It's all these little small detailed jobs that actually take the time rather than the bigger ones, and sometimes it doesn't give you much motivation when you don't appear to have achieved too much, visibly, but actually, technically, these all add up. So that's good. So next step is going to be wiring harness. I've got a T160 new wiring harness in stock, and I've got a 1971 A65 one on the way. Sounds terrible, I know, to use one of those and butcher it at the front end. There's the junction box where we're going to need to cut the harness that we use, because we've already then got the front harness installed. But one of them's got to be cut, and the reason why I got a T160 one originally is because obviously it has wiring included in the harness for the electric start. Some of the electric start components, especially within it, the wire that would go from the solenoid up to the handlebar switches, and therefore we wouldn't have an external wire outside of the harness. So I'm probably tempted to use that. But anyway, we'll focus upon that on the next episode, and for now we'll leave it there. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. As always, thanks for interest, comments, and subscriptions. I enjoy them all, and see you again soon. Thanks again. Bye bye.